Thank you for listening to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast, available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Stitcher. Also, please follow Matt's Movie Reviews on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Reddit, Instagram, and MeWe. And of course, be sure to visit mattsmoviereviews.net for the latest reviews, top 10 lists, and more. Now, on to the show. Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 349. Releasing today in the US in select virtual cinemas is Touch, a psychological thriller that tells the story of Fei Fei, a married Caucasian woman living in China who embarks on an intense affair with a blind massage therapist that turns into a dangerous obsession. Beautifully crafted and performed, Touch is also the only film so far to be made by a Western woman in the People's Republic of China. And I'm happy to say that joining me now is the writer, producer, director, and star of Touch, Aleksandra Szczepanowska. Aleksandra, I thank you so very much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's really interesting just reading up the background about this and also just your background as well. And as I mentioned in my introduction, Touch is filmed in China. You have a long history with the country. It's the first time you went there, is it correct that you were 7 years old and since then you've been visiting on and off over the years?
Yes, you do your research well. I was 7 years old when I went with my mother for, her work was actually in Japan. So we just stopped by China, and at that time there were no Westerners visiting. It was quite different. It was very hard to get a approval to visit, and it could only be done through a group, and it made a huge impression. And then, ever since then, I told my mother when I was 7 years old that I'm going to live there and I'm going to speak the language. And even she comments that she's just shocked I kept that sort of in my heart for all those years, because then when I was maybe 15, I don't remember now, I was still in high school. I was 15. They weren't offering Mandarin at that time. Of course, now a lot of high schools are offering Mandarin as an alternative language, but they were not. And not to date myself, but we didn't have, I don't think we had Google at that time or anything like this. So I had to make some calls basically to find a Mandarin teacher. And the closest I could find was an hour away. I was in Maryland at the time at a university in DC. So I was driving from Baltimore to DC. So I had my driving license. So I was 16. I just got my driving license. So I was driving on weekends to see my tutor. And then when I was in college, I went abroad for a semester. I was studying at Columbia and I studied Mandarin there, and I went abroad for a semester. And then I was going every summer and working, interning. And it sort of kept going like this for many years.
Touch is your first feature film. You've done shorts beforehand. Filming in China, was it always that desire to film in that country, considering your history with it and the very intimate kind of nature you have with that country? I mean, you've learned the language, you've lived there, you have friends there. Was it always on the cards that one day you will film a movie there as well?
Yes, when I started, I remember saying to my mentor before we shot our first short film together, I said, one day I'm going to shoot a film in China. He said, good luck. I said, no, I will. I'll do it. And everybody said, don't do it, but I did it. It was always a desire, for sure. It was a dream come true, really. It was truly a dream come true.
What was the apprehension on the part of your mentor and other people towards you filming there?
So many things. The first is there's really no rule of law except for what a particular official deems as rule of law that particular day or that particular hour. So if anything happens, good luck, you can sue. it will take many years, and then you might win, and the outcome will be nil, and there's no way to enforce it. So it's sort of the Wild West of everything. Anything you do there it's extremely dangerous for artists, where intellectual property can easily be copied or taken away. So this was the major apprehension. And then other than that, it's just such a different way of working and thinking and living. What was the movie that just came out about the grandmother who was dying and everybody was keeping it a secret?
The Farewell.
The Farewell, right. So this is for me a perfect example of sort of the culture there, which is the antithesis to ours, which is actually lying is a good thing because it saves face and keeps people from embarrassing themselves. Versus for us, it's absolutely a bad thing to do, no matter what. So, let's start with that for me is actually one of the central problems of communication between Eastern and Western, between Chinese particularly and Western, is that this notion that by lying, outright lying, I'm actually respecting you. And if you start with that premise for every interaction, whether it's social or business, it creates huge problems for a Westerner who doesn't, and then you don't know when they're lying, when they're saving face for you. It creates a lot of problems in basic interactions and communication.
I mentioned about the plot as well in regards to one of the main characters being the blind masseuse. It's that whole part is very interesting as well. There's a long history of actually blind people in China, in the massage industry. I mean, going back centuries as well. When was the first time you encountered that whilst in China? Because this is the first time I've ever heard of it myself.
Yeah, when I was a student, when I was having my year of foreign exchange, when I was 21 or something like this. So I went to a blind massage parlor, and this was actually the seed for this story. It had a very strange and interesting encounter with a blind masseur who was trying to get as close as possible. So he wasn't, I guess, 100% blind, maybe 90% blind. So if he could see super, 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 super close something or other. So he was getting very, very, very close to me to see the color of my dress or something like this. And I said, "What are you doing?" And, he wanted to see me. I was a Westerner. It was very rare at that time. It actually continues to be rare. I'm surprised every time I go there. I think it's going to be a huge amount of Westerners, and it's not. It's actually not. Since 20 years ago, it's basically the same, if not less. Then, I expect this to be a huge change, and it doesn't change for various reasons. Partly, the government policies and things like this, quite trying to protect the Chinese from sort of a Western onslaught. But no, so it was a very moving and strange and impactful moment with this blind masseur. And they're fantastic. The massage is very, very, very good, and they follow a particular technique called Tuinan. And this was the seed of the story, which I tried to write later, but it was very forced, and it wasn't a good story. So maybe I tried 10 years ago when I first started making, 12 years ago when I first started making short films. I tried to write a storyline, and I stopped. It was hopeless. And then what happened was I went back with my family 6 years ago or so, or 5 years ago. No, I don't remember, maybe 5 years ago. And they left, and I stayed on in China to sort of reconnect with old friends. And I had a very upsetting encounter with a masseur who was not blind, who was very aggressive sexually. And it re-inspired this storyline. And I wanted to combine somehow these two experiences. So that's sort of what happened. But the blind massage is a very special thing in China.
I'm going to talk about the casting now, and I just want to put apology out there now in regards to any mispronunciation of names on my part, because my Mandarin isn't something that I'm good at announcing whatsoever. But the character of the massage therapist is named Bai Yu, played by Jingwei Yuan. How did you come about casting him in the role? Do you know of actors beforehand, before you start production? Is there such a thing as, say, audition rehearsal processes in the Chinese film industry, or are actors assigned to you, assigned to your production? How's that all kind of work?
It's quite different. So if you've been, I wanted very much to audition actors, and I was told that they would be offended by being auditioned, especially if they've done any major motion picture or TV show. They would be offended. And I said, well, how do they tell them I'm Western? That's always, tell them I'm Western. They won't be offended. I do things differently. So auditioning was, but then again, like, so the people who found the actors for me, my line producer, was very connected and has done many feature films. So he provided the casting director, and then I got a very small pool of actors, which was extremely upsetting because it's a huge country with a lot of actors. And again, not knowing if what I'm being told is the truth or not. I don't know, maybe they do audition, but maybe this line producer told me that they don't audition because he didn't want me to audition them. Do you see what I mean? So this is always how it works in China. You're not quite sure what's what. And so, later I found out that I was only given such a small pool because there were kickbacks to the line producer and this sort of thing from the actors. So this is what the film very much touches on, is there are layers and layers and layers in this society. And I speak the language, and I've been going there for many years, since I'm 7 years old. And yet I still can't grasp what the heck is going on half the time. What you see is not what's going on. So I managed to audition them. And I was under a huge time pressure because I wanted to shoot in the summer, and already it was fall. And I had been, preparing and wanting to shoot this film for already 3 years or so. So and going back and forth was taking a huge toll on me personally, and physically. And I was sort of at my rope's end. So I said, fine. So I cast actually in a week. I cast in less than a week. I crewed up in less than a week. Because these were sort of the parameters that were, my line producer was also tapping on his clock that he has another film he wants to make, and this is how it has to be done. So yeah, so it's quite a different process. And they came to the office. There wasn't an audition room. It was mainly discussion versus here, in and out. When I tried to talk to I always like talking to I'm originally an actor, so I like making the process more human, not like a cattle call, right? I like to talk to them and see what kind of person they are, because you're going to be spending lots of time with them. And I was always told by casting directors in the US, no, this is not going to happen. We have 50 people we're going to see. You can't spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes talking to each one, saying how their day was. And it's the reverse in China, or in my particular experience, again, because I don't know what's happening over there really on a regular basis. But just my experience was that it was all talk and very little audition. And to get an audition was considered offensive, but I managed to do it because I said I'm not going to hire anyone if I don't see them, act the part.
I'd imagine with a lot of filmmakers, making a film in a different country comes with it acclimation to cultural customs, etc. What's really interesting from what I've read in regards to your experience in China doing filming touch is all these different kind of surprises kind of pop up in the nature of filmmaking itself. For example, handheld camera, which is something that's very important in the telling of your story. Your story is very intimate. You like to get your camera really in there in the expressions of your characters' faces, the physicality of the relationship between your characters as well, and the handheld nature of that is important. However, that was really frowned upon, wasn't it, by a lot of your producers and other people that you were working with on this movie?
Oh my gosh. I can't even tell you. Not frowned upon. It was basically, I was told I was not a professional filmmaker. that no films are made handheld, that it has to. And then later I found out as well, things happening like the line producer ordered tracks and cranes and all these things, and we paid for them. But I said, I made a shot list. I knew exactly what I was going to do, and there was absolutely no shot that was on a track. It went from more stable to less stable depending on the equipment we used, but it was all handheld, because you have handheld equipment which is more or less stable depending on what kinds of rigs you're using. So this is the only, and I went into the minutia of that with my DP. So we all knew how it was going to be shot, but again, because there's a general mistrust of everyone and everything, because again, that's how it works over there. So when I said that, they weren't quite sure if I really meant that. Do you see? So things were ordered, and a huge amount of money was wasted on things which I knew I was never going to use. And I was told that no professional film is shot handheld. But I mean, listen, my editor, who is Chinese born, my second editor, who is Chinese born, but has been working in the US for the past 15 years, and under his mentor is quite a prominent editor in Hollywood, also told me that no Oscar-nominated films are handheld. So I said, I don't know where this is coming from. Please go look at the Oscar list there. So maybe they're less shaky, but there are absolutely so many films which are handheld, especially, the Oscars are sort of big budget indies, let's say. So they're absolutely handheld. I got a lot of grief for it. And then later what happened was the DP also had a neck injury, but again, I don't know if he really had a neck injury. So let's say we go with it. He had a neck injury like day 3, and I had to hire an emergency basis a camera operator, and he was charged as much as his fee, because it was on a last minute basis, was as much as the DP. So on such a film, which is not a big budget, it had the luxury of sitting next to a DP who was overseeing the camera operator. And then I got a lot of grief for this as well, that I'm damaging the crew. And but I had discussed this beforehand with the DP, and if he's not comfortable, or if doesn't feel physically in shape to do it, he needs to communicate that with me. I can't play mother, right? So I expect we're all adults and professionals, and I respect that if somebody says we need an alternate because that's going to hurt me, I would listen to that very carefully, and I would get an alternate so they could rotate, or we could figure something out, or some shots won't be handheld just to save your. In fact, I just spoke to a very successful DP here in America about it, and he said, yeah, DPs will do everything just to please the director, and in the end they will hurt their bodies. But I now have learned from that experience, and I will play mother and make sure that nobody's just doing it to say yes. I mean, in China, there's much more of the yes, ma'am, yes, sir mentality than here. But now I will take great care. But that was a situation where I was sort of upset that why didn't he work out? He had 2 month notice. You work out, you stretch, you say you need an alternative, you do all sorts of things to prevent this neck injury, which happened on day 3. So it was, and I was also worried because when you do have, the movement is so specific to the operator, I was very worried that there would be some kind of incongruency, but it turned out that the operator, I preferred his movement than the original DP who was operating. So it worked out really, really well.
Location is very important as well to this story that you have in Touch. All the time that you spent there in China, did you ever mark in your mind different places that you visited, like, oh, that'll be a good shot for something in the future, or that one may be a great place to film a movie? Did you have things like that, or again, are things assigned to you where you can and can't film?
No, nothing was assigned to me. In fact, I did. Yeah, well, it's actually interesting that you say that, because a lot of things were attempted to be assigned to me. Like, here are your actors, you're not auditioning them. No, I will audition them. You as a director aren't allowed to have contact with your actors or their information. It goes through the casting director. No, that won't work. I'm going to have contact with them. So a lot of things were presented this way, like you say, assigned, which is not done in the West. And I said, no, I'm not going to shoot that way. That's not the way I do it. That's not reasonable. There were moments where I did go the Chinese way because I didn't want to, it's obviously not good to push on every, you pick your battles basically. So
Yes.
we did things like shooting for 40 days straight without a break. That's the Chinese way. So there were things like this, which I did do the Chinese way, where I could sort of tolerate it. Did I want to shoot 40 days as the director, writer, actor, producer without a break? No. But everybody was used to that. And they said people will wander away, people will leave the set, because they think they're not getting paid for those free days. Like it will go bad. It will go really bad. So I said, okay, we're going to do it that way. So the locations where they assigned to me, it was a very funny thing. I wanted to originally shoot in Qingdao, which is a German, it used to be a German sort of colonized town in China on the coast, which is where Qingdao beer comes from. So all those breweries are actually German, which then the Chinese eventually took over. And I really loved Qingdao because it was strange and mysterious. And I did do a lot of location scouting on my own for years before, while I had the script in hand. I'd written the script and I hadn't decided on any partner yet. I did a lot of scouting just myself to also enrich the text and the script and the screenplay. And I had never been to Qingdao, and I went there specifically to scout for the film. And I absolutely loved it. And it was so perfect, and it was mysterious, and it had this mixture, because of the German influence, it had this mixture of East and West, which is what I wanted very much for the film.
Mm-hmm.
And it had these mansions, which are actually quite hard to find in China. Had a couple of these old mansions, which looked very European, which I thought was very interesting and bizarre. And then the line producer said, no, it's going to cost too much because everyone's based in Beijing, and we have to basically fly or transport everyone. And so I said, okay, well, fine. So where can we go? And then he said, there's this town, which I'd never been to, which is east of Beijing, called Beidaihe. And it's a resort town where actually the government goes all the time for summits and things like this. And it's sort of the elites go from Beijing. It's this beach town, which I had never been to, never even heard of all my years in China. Very strange. So it was also had this element. They had a Russian element, not a German element. It had Russian influence. Also European, also strange, mysterious, not as beautiful as Qingdao, in my personal opinion. And what happened was, and this is very much the Chinese way, nothing is communicated to me. It's just presented as you said to me. So what happened was, we had a local location guy who wasn't at all a location guy. It was somebody's friend who, like in China, Gwen, everyone's heard the term guanxi, right? Relationships. So somebody scratches your back, you scratch it back, and this kind of thing. So for some reason, some guy needed to hire this guy who really was not a location guy at all. And it was very frustrating because it was not organized at all. We wasted loads of time. For me, who's hyper organized and efficient, I was tearing my hair out. And we were in a caravan. I don't know why, these are the kinds of things where I was like, okay, I'll go with the flow. I'm not going to pick this battle. But so we were in a caravan of like 3-4 vans with like 10 people each. Why do all these people need to go location scouting, And then we were going back and forth and wasting a lot of time because we were zigzagging through the map instead of hitting all the places that are near each other first, because calls weren't made beforehand to make sure things were open. You see where I'm going at this. So
yes.
I said, well, okay, I'm going with the flow. Hated everything I saw. It was wrong. It looked like I'm from Poland. It looked like, like these communist, neighborhoods, suburban communist neighborhoods with these post-Soviet sort of these apartment buildings that are just without any character. I mean, they have a character of being sort of communist. I don't know if I'm describing them well. They're sort of totally without character. There's blocks of apartment buildings that are so depressing looking.
Yes.
And they have that in China. And I was like, wow, okay, I'm transported back to Poland. So, but this is not going to work for the script. And so we were going around and around in circles. And then we passed by this, I could just see a glimmer of this town, this old town. And I said, wait, what's that? No, we're not going there. We're not going, keep going. I said, no, wait, turn around. No, okay, we keep going. So again, we pass by it. I see a glimmer of it from another angle. I said, okay, driver, you are going right now. Well, there are 4 other cars. I don't care. You're going right now. They can catch up later. We're going into that town. So this is kind of how, in the end, it's not how I like to operate, but it was sort of like I was, nothing's communicated, nothing's transparent. So in the end, time is being wasted. What do you do? So we go into the town, and it's a dream. It's this old town that reminds me very much of Qingdao, that has all this flavor and rich characteristic. I said, this is where we're shooting everything, everything. And then later I found out why, it could have easily been communicated to me beforehand, but later I found out very, very by chance why they didn't want me to see this place. And it's because it's where all the mansions are of literally the premier, Premier Xi and all these people have homes there and have offices there. And what happens is, on a daily basis, there is so much policing that roads literally change directions. Like one day it's one way going south, and the next day it's one way going north without warning. Or like at 2 p.m. it changes, or suddenly this whole area is blocked off because there's a meeting without warning, because it's security, so they can't give warnings. And so they said it will be a nightmare to shoot here because of this situation. And I said, well, everything you showed me doesn't work. And this is exactly what I wanted. It's either this or Qingdao. We have to shoot here. Yeah. We'll deal with it. We'll deal with it. And they were like, okay, crazy Western woman. And I said, okay, well, this is what we've got to do. So, the garden I loved, of course, was Premier Xi's garden. He has good taste. So we couldn't shoot there. But we eventually found a garden, for the moment she encounters Bayou. We eventually found a place which was really quite perfect. But this was sort of the experience from A to Z. And I eventually people got used to me, I guess, and I eventually got used to them. But it was a little difficult, and everything that was presented to me, almost everything, I reject. I bucked kind of the system, because in the end, I was serving the film, not what was comfortable to the people around me.
You star in the film as well. So while you're dealing with all of these struggles, issues as both producer and director, you have to give performance on film as well.
Yeah.
Do you take all that stress or the anxiety, I imagine, that you've gone through with what's happening behind the scenes to the screen as well? Because it is a performance that really demands intensity and really complex it's a complex emotional performance. Do you bring what you're dealing with off screen into your character? Do you kind of funnel it and put it into a positive kind of experience?
Yeah, there were moments which were very positive. I don't want to say that everything was so negative, but it was very much an uphill battle, which, isn't always a negative thing. Sometimes we all laugh at the end of the day how crazy it all was. It wasn't always super negative. Believe me, it often was, but I don't want to say the whole thing was like that. But there were a lot of frustration. I say frustrations more than negativity. It was very frustrating. And yeah, of course, I think all actors are doing their job if they funnel whatever's happening in their personal life at that particular moment, or the prep which they've done, of course, is paramount, and then they take whatever's happening at the time. I prepared so hard and so long for the role that it almost was second nature when we were on set. And when some things happened, and there were a couple of moments which were extremely difficult, and I couldn't act. I said, okay, we're all taking a break. We're going to take an hour break. That's it. Or I just dealt with them in other ways. But there were just a couple of moments like that where it was too much. It was too much was going on that was not. It was hindering for that particular scene that needed to happen. It wasn't going to work. I couldn't funnel the frustrations. I needed to be super vulnerable and soft and romantic. And this horrible thing is happening. So no, we're gonna take a break, or this person needs to leave the set right now. That was inappropriate. They need to leave, because I can't work. I need to prepare, and I can't work with that happening. There were only literally, I think, 2 that I can remember. There were 2 moments like that where it went too far, and I had to take sort of a more extreme measure. But otherwise, yeah, I think it's mostly preparation, and then it's taking the energy from the people around you and what's happening, for sure.
When you watch the film now, I mean, when I watched the movie, I was just blown away by it because I just absolutely love the look of it. I love the performances, just everything about it is just so unique, and there's a real strong feeling of authenticity to it all as well, in the emotions and in the relationships as well. When you watch the film, as a filmmaker, as a star, as a producer, can you shut away the experiences you had in watching the film? Can you watch it purely as a film, or does the experiences of what's happening behind the scenes and the struggles that you have with it, does that really come to the fore first? Because sometimes I'm reminded of filmmakers like, for example, Steven Spielberg always talks about Jaws, and he always says, you watch Jaws, you watch the shark movie. When I watch Jaws, I think about all the gray hairs in my head at the end of that kind of watch movie,
Yeah.
But do you think the same thing as well? Is it hard to detach the experience away from the watching of a film, especially your own film, where you put so much into it and you have to do such an uphill battle?
Absolutely. I can't watch it. I mean, my husband actually hasn't seen, I think, even the final version. He saw iterations of it and he's like, let's watch it. And I'm like, yeah. Can we watch something else? Absolutely. And also, I spent so much time editing and then re-editing it with another editor. So when I see it, I see what I did wrong and I see what I would have done different. And I also, not only the experiences that we're discussing now, but I also see, where I think it falls short. I beat myself up a lot when I watch anything I've ever done. So it's very painful to actually watch it. I can't enjoy it at all. That's absolutely for sure.
Well, when I watch it, I think I just watched a remarkable film. I really do. And I hope a lot of people out there get their chance to watch it too. It is available right now, virtual cinemas across the US. Actually, there's actually a website you can go to, laemmie.com, LAEMMIE.com, and they are hosting the film. I really recommend people get on and watch this movie because, as I said before, I love the performances. I love the look of the film, especially the handheld camera. So excellent of you to stick to your guns there and make sure that was in there, because it just adds so much to everything in this movie. I think it's such an intimate film. I think the way that you capture the characters, especially the intimacy between them all, and the stakes. I like to say that word, stakes in films. There needs to be stakes, dramatic stakes, etc. And you really feel those stakes in this movie, especially in the relationships. So I just want to say, Aleksandra, thank you so much for your time, and look, congratulations on the movie. I do hope one day when you're a little more removed from the experience of making the film, you can watch it and see just what great work you've done here.
That means so much to me. Thank you so much, Matthew.
It's well deserved. It really is. And I thank you again for your time today. And I can't wait to see what you do next. Please let me know what's next in Horizon for you, because I'd love to see what you do for your future works as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking with you.